those of you watching this probably know who I am. You've seen me, or we've been on weekends or been at gatherings together. And so you know who I am, but it's interesting that not a lot of people know who I am. And so I grew up on a reservation, born and grew up on a reservation until I was in the 10th grade. And my mom is Native and my dad was white. And I was raised on a reservation. My family were indigenous Native people. So I was treated as a Native person, and so I identify as a Native person. All of those years up until leaving the reservation to go to a different school in the 10th grade was imprinted on me and culturally as a Native person. I don't know how to convey what that experience was like for me. I don't know how to draw the lines and paint the pictures to attempt to illustrate what that was. But what I do know is that there were a lot of things done to try to get me to be as white as I could so that I could experience the benefits of what being white could be. And, I was told to stay out of the sun so that my skin didn't get dark and I could appear as white as possible. My mom would correct me all the time about the way I spoke English so that it didn't sound a certain way and I could be viewed and heard as white as possible. So I'm still obviously unraveling this. I'm 43 years old. I was born in 1977. And part of the unraveling of that has been done in MKP and looking at my imprinting and my training throughout my life, and especially my childhood, as we all know, that had me relate to the world. So I did my NWTA the weekend of March 12th through 14th, 2004. That Saturday was March 13th, and I did my carpet work. I have, done between, 90 and 100 NWTAs now. And I certified as a co-leader 10 years ago, and full leader about 5 years ago, I suppose. So I have been really hesitant to speak from the heart about what's true for me, about, some of the deeper parts of my identity. The thing of it is, there's just so few natives left in our country that it's hard for people to know how to hold space around that. And I have found a pretty good home with a lot of the Black folks and Black leaders in different places, especially Chicago. But I've struggled to be able to speak from the heart. I don't know that many people like hearing that I see white privilege everywhere, and that beyond even white privilege, I see white supremacy operating all around me. And a deep truth in my heart is that from where you're sitting or standing, wherever you are, you're on stolen native land. I don't think that that's very popular to hear, but it goes to the point, which is that imperialism and colonialism is a way of life in America. And it happens in all kinds of overt ways and insidious ways constantly. So I believe I have a pretty broad perspective about what it's like to be indigenous, what it's like to be a part of the Mankind Project, and also what it's like to be a part of NWTAs and initiation. So what I want you to know is that I think that most of us all want the same thing. I think that we all want to grow and create a place of an integrity, a container that has integrity, where others can grow too. And my firm belief is that the container needs to be aligned, and it needs to be operating in integrity with what it knows is right. And a very simple but very clear and poignant quote from Maya Angelou is, "Do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better." I think that that's one of the things that we know in the Mankind Project and in our circles and in our communities and in our relationships, is that most things are unconscious. They're in shadow. But when we get them out of shadow, sometimes there's things that are so ingrained and such bad habits that we resist changing them. And it takes courage, and it takes fighting, and it takes knowing that what's right has to be done. So I think that once we bring them into the conscious mind, we're obligated to do something about it. And I think that's what's going on right now, is we know that some things are not aligned. And I think there's some people that are not sure if they're willing to hear the call and to do what in their heart they feel obligated to do. So I've never felt good about several different things on the New Warrior Training Adventure, especially the Sweat Lodge. It was boggling to me to see Sweat Lodges being conducted, and it just never sat right with me. The adoption of it as a practice, as a spiritual practice, as a doctrine and dogma in an organization didn't make sense to me. And it didn't make sense to me from what I'd experienced and learned growing up. But at the time when I came into the Mankind Project in my 20s, I was desperate. I was desperate for the technology that we all know exists in the Mankind Project around shadow work and about learning how to communicate and what our needs are and how to get those met. So I was willing to do the mental and psychic gymnastics to contort myself, to make certain things okay and look the other way and try to get what I needed. To be the best person I could be, which I didn't learn as much on the reservation. And I could tell you how fucked up that is and why reservations exist, but I'll save you that for another conversation at another time. So I was willing to look past those incongruences because I needed that technology. And I think that's what many of us have done, is we've just kind of looked the other way. We've looked past certain things, and it's time that for me, I no longer look past those things. And I've come to understand that it's been a big betrayal of myself to not speak that truth. I know we can figure out another way. I have faith in that. I know that we're creative, brilliant people that have been doing these things for a long time and been in many ways on the cutting edge. And now it's time to lean into that. Something that's always been confusing for me is why a few people in one tribe speak for that tribe, meaning the Lakota, and why MKP has chosen to have the Lakota speak for nearly 500 tribes in the United States to say that something is okay or not okay, or that something is right or not right. I thought it's interesting that that there's some type of an exchange. There's an alliance with the Lakota people and the Tatanka Alliance, what have you. And I respect it, and I think it's great. And I think that, the Lakota people, as well as all Native people, need to have access to things that have been denied for so long. But why just one group? Why? I asked myself, as that alliance was being formed, what about all the other tribes? What about my tribe? And I think that there's something to that. So the United States has broken every treaty with every tribe in what we call America for hundreds of years. So why are we looking as, an organization called the Mankind Project to write this with the Lakota and not all tribes? So I've led weekends in Australia and New Zealand and in South Africa, and I've led them in other places as well. But those countries in particular, I've witnessed a completely different relationship with the indigenous people of those countries. And it's sad to me that those countries are outpacing us in America in getting it right with the relationship that they have with the original inhabitants of the land that they live on, and that's not happening on the land we live on here. Not in general, and not in the Mankind Project. So I'll say that again. MKP nor America is doing anything to gain much traction in gaining a right relationship with the original inhabitants of the land that you're standing on. And the land that you're standing on is stolen. Stolen land. So thanks for considering this.